It's London Climate Action Week, guys, and the world's leading climate professionals are coming together right now to find solutions to the climate crisis. Now, with the United Nations Climate Conference in Glasgow pushed to next year because of Corona, it's incredibly important that this event, that the London Climate Action Week, is actually happening, because the clock keeps ticking. It doesn't just pause because of Corona. In the Paris Agreement, the world decided to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. And this means we only have about 25 years left before our remaining carbon budget will be exhausted. No matter what happens at the moment, we don't have any time to waste. Even less so if we want to limit global warming to below 1.5 degrees. Because in that case, in that scenario, we only have 7 years left in which we have to figure out new ways how to reduce our carbon footprints. And whereas international governments have to definitely step up their game in the fight against the climate crisis, we as individuals also have to play our part. That's why one of the main themes of this year's London Climate Action Week is around how we can mobilize the whole of society to take climate action. And obviously there are many different solutions that will have to come together here, but I believe mindfulness can be one of the ways to mobilize society. I'll tell you why and how in a little bit, but first of all, let's dive into the concept of mindfulness. Has become a huge buzzword in pop culture over the last 15 years or so, but what does it actually mean? You could say that the opposite of mindfulness is mindfulness. In this sketch, the guy's mind is very full. He's distracted by all kinds of thoughts and worries, whereas his dog is totally in the moment, simply enjoying the trees as they walk past them. At its core, that's what mindfulness is about. The way one definition puts it, mindfulness means simply paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And to be honest, that's something that I didn't do for a long time too. Until about 2.5 years ago, I was very much like the guy on the graphic, quite sad, with lots of worries and concerns on my mind all the time, very unfocused, very unbalanced. And then I started with mindfulness practices such as yoga and meditation, and that was a game changer for me. But before I tell you the end of my story, how do we get from mindfulness to sustainable behavior and climate action? Quite simply and naturally, it appears. This is a person meditating at the ocean. I took the image from the stock photo website Unsplash, where I simply searched for mindfulness. And the same search showed this. And I also did a Google image search for the quote of the mindfulness definition I just mentioned. The result of this was what you see here. Now, what all of these images about mindfulness have in common is nature. And there are hundreds and thousands more images like these. You could argue it's just a creative decision to associate mindfulness with nature, but there's evidence that suggests that there is more to it. Studies have found that mindfulness enhances the awareness of how we are interconnected with nature and how our actions have a direct effect on the environment and ecosystem. That's why just a few years ago, sustainability scholars coined the term ecological mindfulness as a new and promising approach to promote social and environmental sustainability. Now, whether you call it mindfulness or ecological mindfulness, practicing it can change attitudes and consequently behaviors. Now, those are examples of our default settings when it comes to energy, transport, materials, food, and nature. Because our minds are so full, we often simply don't second guess our actions. And so, for example, stay with our energy provider, which might not be green, or we simply use plastic bottle toiletries because we've always used them. Through mindfulness practice, that's the promising theory, we will feel more connected to nature and become more aware of the impact that our actions have on nature, which will hopefully lead us to behave more sustainably. For example, by switching to a green energy provider or using plastic-free products. And that is then not just good for climate and planet, but also for us, because cleaner air, less emissions, cycling instead of driving, having a more plant-based diet, all of these things can greatly benefit our health. There is a body of scientific literature that, in a nutshell, says that there are plenty of co-benefits for the planet and our health if we transition to a low-carbon economy. And apart from those co-benefits, mindfulness can simply be good for our health on its own. A lot of findings on mindfulness are not quite robust enough yet to provide conclusive evidence because studies had small sample sizes or problematic experimental designs. But there are a handful of areas where we know from well-designed studies that practicing mindfulness is having health benefits. For example, it is known that it reduces stress and can help regulate blood pressure. So bringing all of this together, we can argue that people can be both healthier and happier and mitigate climate change if they practice mindfulness. And that's exactly the hypothesis that the researchers of the Mindful Climate Action Program of the University of Wisconsin are testing. And now the head of the program, Bruce Barrett, is going to explain a little bit more about the program.
Hello, my name is Bruce Barrett. I am a family physician and a research professor at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin, USA. And I'm the originator of the Mindful Climate Action Program, along with a couple dozen other collaborators here. Our work has been based in the idea that people indeed could change their behaviors to help both their own personal health, both mental and physical, and their sustainability behaviors at the same time, and that practicing mindfulness is the key that allows people, or at least facilitates people doing that. So through awareness and understanding of physical sensations, thoughts, feelings, emotions, one can prioritize how one thinks and chooses behaviors and how one maintains them and develops them into habits. So the Mindful Climate Action Program is based on improving personal health and well-being, decreasing energy use, reducing automobile and other fossil-fueled transportation use, increasing active transport, which allows more exercise and physical activity, and shifting diet towards plant-based foods away from meat and dairy. And also aimed at reducing unnecessary consumption. All of these are both good for the environment and good for the individual. By moving more and by eating less fatty foods, our cardiovascular systems are enhanced. By spending less time in automobiles and less time purchasing unneeded goods, we're saving money. We're saving the stress of the everyday work life and movements. Mental health is improving, and in the long run, this aligns with all of the world scientific bodies' recommendations for how to change society, and it does so while improving individuals' health. Our paradigm comes a little bit from a psychological theory that has been used for many years, especially in helping people get off of addiction. It's called the stages of change theory, and it notes that people are really in different places in their lives. Some people are in denial about their addiction or about the climate change. Some people are accepting that there's something to it, there's some problem or something that they want to change. in themselves and the world around them. Some people have become supporters of a cause, supporters of getting off of tobacco, for instance, or supporters of helping the world get off of fossil fuels, for instance. And some people then become activists, or in the case of addiction, people have changed and are able to maintain those changes. So here we're working with people using mindfulness practices to help them move along that spectrum from denier to acceptor to supporter to activist in both their personal health behaviors and in their sustainability behaviors. The Mindful Climate Action course is based in 8 weeks. It's similar. It's based on Jon Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction course, and each week has a different theme. So the weeks shown on your slide here start out with mindful eating, and then water considerations, and then active transport, and then energy. And every week people learn mindfulness meditation practices that align with sustainability teachings. The sustainability teachings come from top scientists who are experts in those fields. We've actually modified this curriculum now, so we now start with air because we've come to understand that the breath meditation is a very powerful way to start learning meditation, and that the air around us contains the greenhouse gases that are warming the planet. It also can contain particulates and other pollutants that can make people sick. So we start out with air, and then move on to water. Water is also an excellent medium for understanding health and for meditating. One can think of a still pool or ripples across a pond. There's many ways to use water in meditation. We move on to food, where you can learn to be more mindful about your eating, which can help you eat less junk food or enjoy your food more, lower the calorie burden, choose foods that are healthy for you and for your environment. So each week in this 8-week course has sets of meditations that are aligned with environmental teachings, which are incorporated in 10 to 15 minute videos by some of the world's top scientists. We've only done 2 pilots at this point. We don't have strong scientific evidence, but our participants have almost universally agreed that it worked with them. It helped them improve things, and in different ways. Some of them became mindful of turning out the lights or turning off machines or computers in there to reduce the energy costs. Some people improved their diets. Some people learned that mindful walking was a way to become more mentally healthy and also to move the body and become more physically healthy, and that allowed people to maybe take fewer trips to the grocery store, be a little bit more mindful about when we need to shop, what we need to shop for. So we have dozens of quotes, a couple appear here, but we have lots of quotes from the people who took part in the first 2 pilot studies. But at this point, this is really just the beginning. It's an incipient science of behavior change based with mindfulness aimed at the co-benefits of both health and sustainability. We do hope to take this out to more thorough scientific testing with randomized controlled trials with hundreds of participants so that we can have statistical power to measure these different domains. We hope that this will be one of many types of similar programs that will be incorporated into society at large. Businesses may choose to incorporate such programs in the wellness for their employees, also in ways to reduce their energy bills. Community and faith-based organizations might bring this in because they've bought into the need to help improve the world and reduce the impacts of climate change. Educational institutions might take this type of approach in some of their courses or offer it to their instructors and students. And the general public, if we can figure out how to get this rolled out on platforms so that people can do self-learning modules through the internet, individuals and general public dissemination might be possible. So at this point, it's really just a incipient idea that aligns well with Lisa's personal experience and her talk. And I just want to thank her for letting me be here, and thank you all for taking part in this in this program.
Okay, now as Bruce just mentioned, one way to scale up and potentially test ecological mindfulness is to include it in corporate employee wellness programs, such as the Wellness Wednesday we have here at HKX. And if you want to test it for yourself, then you're lucky, because we're doing a special Wellness Wednesday during the London Climate Action Week, including a Reiki World Peace meditation where you set your intention towards the care of the planet as well as yourselves. Now, last but not least, returning to my story, where I told you that my mind used to be very full and I quite unfocused, unbalanced, unhappy. Practicing mindfulness helped me on so many levels. Now I sleep better, I feel calmer, I'm more focused at work and in life, and it also literally reminded me. For example, I've become much more mindful of what I eat. First, less meat, now no meat, or very, very rarely. I've become more mindful of the products I use as well. These days I only use solid shampoo instead of plastic bottle stuff, for example. And in general, through mindfulness, I have developed so many small new habits that I think can make a big difference. It gave me the additional headspace to even start thinking about sustainability and the climate. And eventually this happened. Last year, I organized my first climate strike. Obviously, I'm only a case study of one, but I've heard from many other people in the climate arena that their transformation from simply accepting climate change to doing something about it started with, or at least had something to do with, mindfulness. So let's use mindfulness to literally remind ourselves for our own happiness and health, and for the health of our planet and climate. And if you want to hear more about mindfulness and climate action, you can check out my Instagram here, or visit the website of the Mindful Climate Action Program.